Today, we're going to talk about the 6 early signs of what was that? Dementia. Now, before I begin, I want to tell you a little story about what happened when I was in practice. And this relates to early signs of dementia that weren't really early signs of dementia. You see, when you're stressed or tired, or maybe you didn't sleep, you could have all of the symptoms of dementia, but not really have dementia. And the worst thing you could do is give your spouse or partner the wrong diagnosis, or even diagnose them at all. That's really, really bad. And this relates to a couple that came in my office quite some years ago with early signs of dementia. And as I was talking to the husband, I asked him, when did you first notice signs of dementia? He said, I'm not sure, but I think it was when my wife started to diagnose me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I noticed when they were sitting there, they were going back and forth. And the husband was having problems remembering certain things. And his wife was constantly correcting him and telling him, honey, you forgot again. And you're mixing up your words and et cetera, et cetera. And so I was brutally honest. And I actually just told her, that's going to make things worse. Every time you remind someone that you made a mistake, you're just going to lock it in and they're going to keep making the mistake over and over and over. So I pulled the wife to the side and I said, I want you to do an experiment. I want you to just let him make mistakes and just don't correct him at all for 1 week. And when they came back after a week, it was quite amazing because he was articulate, he was sharp, he didn't seem to have any cognitive dysfunction at all. So I just want to bring that up because when I cover these 6 signs, it doesn't mean that you have dementia if you have these occasionally. And if you know someone who has these symptoms, just realize it could be sleep, it could be their blood sugars, it could be any number of things that is not real dementia. All right, that being said, what is dementia? It's a mental decline. And what's usually happening is certain parts of your brain are atrophying, they're shrinking, specifically a structure called the hippocampus, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But here are the early signs, okay? You have difficulty organizing and planning things. You have personality changes, okay? There's a change in personality, but again, that can happen for any number of reasons. Number 3, and this is interesting, constipation. Now, realize just because you have constipation does not mean you have dementia, but it is one of the early signs simply because of the connection between the gut and the brain. Your gut is like a second brain. You have more nerve fibers in your digestive system than you do in your spinal column. And a lot of cognitive problems actually can stem from your gut. The microbiome in your gut, all those bacteria, make neurotransmitters. In fact, those little microbes make more serotonin than your brain makes serotonin. And people that have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's have a much higher incidence of constipation than someone who doesn't have those issues. And then the next symptom would be sensory dysfunction. That can include issues with smell, taste, hearing, your eyesight, and it can also be your appetite. All of these could be some of the early signs of a cognitive decline. And as it declines more and more and more, the ability to focus, the ability to concentrate, and your overall memory is what really shows up as being a problem. All right, number 5, language problems, which I've already mentioned. Like you're trying to find words for certain things. You tend to repeat things over and over again, or you might be mixing up your words. This is a problem with the hippocampus. And there's a lot more to this topic that I'm not going to get into in this video, but like there's one symptom, for example, that a person is able to talk and make sentences totally fine, but it's incoherent. What they're saying does not make sense. And I'm sure that's extremely frustrating because the person is trying to get out this communication, but it's coming out very randomly and all over the place. This is mainly a problem with this hippocampus, and the hippocampus is just shrinking. I'm going to show you what to do if you have this problem or you know someone who has this problem. And the last sign of early dementia is the inability to navigate well in new places. So let's say, for example, you're going into a new place, you're trying to find a store, and you just cannot, for the life of you, find this location. This is because in our brain, we have a GPS that allows us to locate where we are in space. And when this area goes down, you lose your GPS. So your internal map is dysfunctional and you just cannot find out where you are. So if you have a problem with that, that could be an early sign of dementia. All right, now I'm going to show you 7 things that you need to do to correct this, okay, before it becomes more advanced. The best time to correct this is right now in these early stages as compared to waiting before it becomes a real big problem. And I think you can correct it if you get it early enough. But the big problem in medicine is the lack of importance or significance that your diet makes in this area of your body. They don't seem to connect the dots between the great importance of what you eat and how that can affect your brain. They're more like, well, it could be genetic, could just be some stress, things just happen, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Your diet is key in preventing and even reversing dementia if you can get it early enough. All right, so the first thing to know is what would shrink your hippocampus, okay? A really common cause of a problem with hippocampus, especially when it atrophies, is a thiamine deficiency. That is a B1 deficiency. And you can look this up, it's well known, but usually that can happen from alcohol, but it can also happen when you're on a high carb diet. If you're consuming a lot of carbohydrates, you are going to deplete vitamin B1. So the more sugar you eat, the more carbohydrates you consume, the more B1 your body needs. The demand for thiamine goes way up when you consume carbohydrates because you need vitamin B1 to metabolize carbohydrates. And the more alcohol you drink, the more B1 you need as well. So number 1, start taking B1. And nutritional yeast is the best source of B1. And just make sure that you get the kind that's not fortified with synthetic vitamins. I recommend going on the natural side because synthetic vitamins might work initially, but they're not a good long-term solution. Now, of course, you also want to do things that will prevent a B1 deficiency. And that would be not drinking alcohol anymore and also giving up some of these carbs. But I have some good news. You can consume vegetable carbohydrates, right? So that's exciting. All right, let's switch to number 2. And I've already kind of talked a little bit about this, but you want to fix the gut, the microbiome. There's some real interesting research on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and there seems to always be a lack of diversity in the microbiome. There always seems to be gut inflammation in these patients as well. So one of the important things to do is to increase the diversity of the microbiome. And one of the best ways to do that is to start consuming different types of vegetables, not just one type of vegetable over and over and over, like just salad. But if you're going to do salad, have a wide variety of different types of salad, different types of fibers that have different phytonutrients that can then strengthen different strands. So that's one way. Another way is to do fasting. Fasting increases the diversity of your microbiome. Now, you would think if you starved off the microbes, they would get weaker, but they get stronger. And you have new strains that just kind of come out and start to thrive. It's part of a survival mechanism that has been evolving for eons. Now, also realize that your gut and your brain is bidirectional, okay? Through the vagus nerve, you have information going from the gut to the brain and information going from the brain down to the gut. So if you have a problem with your brain, you're gonna have a problem with your gut. If you have a problem with your gut, you can have a problem with your brain. And like I said before, a good amount of the neurotransmitters are produced by your microbes. A good amount of the B vitamins are made by your own microbes. And there's been some really good research on getting people off gluten and seeing huge improvements in dementia. And so gluten can actually worsen dementia. And I'm not just talking about going on a gluten-free diet. I'm talking about going on a low-carb, no-grain diet. And one little point about GMO foods. Foods that have been exposed to glyphosate, which is an herbicide, which is connected to GMO foods, are not good for your brain simply because glyphosate works by destroying microorganisms, certain pathways in microbes like bacteria. Well, guess what? that can affect our microbes just like it affects the microbes in the soil. So you do want to start consuming more organic foods, non-GMO foods. All right, number 3, and this is pretty powerful. I found some great research on consuming more sprouts, like broccoli sprouts that have sulforaphane. Now, the unique thing about sprouts is that they come from these little seeds, okay? And if you were to consume the seed, it would be, first of all, not very available to you as far as the nutrition in it. And so it's very difficult to digest, but when it sprouts, you have incredible amounts of nutrition that's released. And so if you're consuming sprouts on a regular basis, you're not only getting some of the peak nutrition that a plant has, but you're also getting certain phytonutrients that are not just anti-cancer, like I've talked about in other videos, they are a superfood for your brain. So sulforaphane in broccoli sprouts is fantastic for any type of neurodegenerative disorders. Plus, sprouts are really good for your gut. And with Alzheimer's patients and Parkinson's, the incidence of leaky gut is also very, very high. So include sprouts in your salad on a regular basis, and they're very, very cheap to grow yourself. All right, number 4, and this is also very, very important, ketones. Ketones bypass the damage in the brain and feed the neurons directly, because think about what's happening. In the hippocampus, you're getting destruction of your brain cells. So we need to restore that. We need to feed the brain cells fuel. So apparently at that stage, it's not getting glucose fuel. So if you feed it ketone fuel, it can thrive. And so if you have any stage of dementia at all, you need to be doing regular intermittent fasting as well as periodic prolonged fasting, and you're going to see huge benefits. And for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that you're going to generate a lot more ketones than you would even if you went on a low carb diet. And you're also going to upregulate all sorts of genetic factors that support your brain. Now, I also recommend consuming like MCT oil. You can also do exogenous ketones. You can buy these ketones as a supplement. And so you just take like 1 tablespoon of MCT oil, maybe twice a day, and that will help your brain a lot. All right, ginkgo biloba has shown some significant benefits for dementia patients, specifically the extract EGB761. So apparently that extract gives you some significant neuroprotection to your brain. All right, number 6, this is a good one, lion's mane mushroom. You know, mushrooms are just fascinating. The research done on lion's mane is just off the charts as far as impacting your cognitive function. I mean, it's not insignificant. It creates a huge impact on your brain. So I'm going to put that information down below. And then there's the usual recommendations that I always talk about in my videos on your brain. That would be the omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA, found in fatty fish and fish oil, and especially cod liver oil. Then you also have vitamin D, which has a huge impact. Zinc, very important. Exercise, something else that's very important to increase oxygen to your brain. And sleep. If you're not sleeping, you're going to jack up cortisol, you're going to be more stressed, and you're going to deplete the brain of oxygen. Now, if you haven't seen my recent video on the brain, you need to check this out. I put it up right here.